Hey guys, it's Natalia, and today I'm going to share with you guys how I track all of my expenses because I am a freelancer, I'm a self-employed girly, I am an entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, small business owner, all the things. And basically I get my income from so many random different sources. I don't have like a steady paycheck from like a normal corporate job that takes out taxes for me or any of that. So I've learned how to really track my expenses and make sure that I am fully aware of how much money is coming in every month, how much money I'm taking out every month, and how that balances together. I know there's a lot of different apps you can use. I used to use QuickBooks for a while and I didn't really love it. I also at some point was like, I just don't need to have all these subscriptions. So I ended up cutting a lot of subscriptions, and QuickBooks was one of them because honestly, I love a spreadsheet. I love making spreadsheets. I like tracking things, and I don't mind kind of doing that and updating it throughout the weeks or months or however often. So this method of like tracking it myself works really well for me. Obviously, if you're the kind of person that can't take accountability for something like that, I do think there's a lot of great apps you can use to kind of track your finances and kind of see the same kind of data points, but I guess I really like to have control of it, and I like having nitty-gritty data sometimes. So this is the method I've used for the past 4 years of tracking all of my business expenses, my personal expenses, all the things. I'm gonna show you guys my generic template for just all of my expenses of my like life and everything, and my business is kind of put into it. But I do also have the same template that I edited to be business specific. So then once I do my full expense list, whatever, on this spreadsheet, I take all the business expenses that I have written on there, put it in a different spreadsheet, and then categorize it even deeper as like business expenses, so that when I do my taxes, I have it all in like a perfect little formula of knowing how much I spent on like fabrics, for example, or on like a specific trims store or something like that. So that's more nitty-gritty on like specific business stuff, but it is technically the same spreadsheet. I just tweak it a little bit for business expenses. Anyway, all that to say is that I love a spreadsheet. I will have the link to the spreadsheet down below for you guys to download. It'll be free. I actually modeled it off of Natalie Barbu. She is a YouTuber that I love, and she has done a lot of really fun finance videos, and she shared this template probably years ago that she had created, and then I used that one, tweaked it a little bit, and I'm gonna have mine down below for you guys. Again, free to download. It's just on Google Sheets, so just make a copy of it and then you can use it for yourself. But yeah, I'm gonna show you guys kind of how I go about it and what it looks like and how it works, and kind of share with you my tips and tricks of figuring out my finances. Obviously, I'm not a financial expert, and considering I've tweaked this template every year after doing my taxes and realizing I could like further help myself if I categorize things deeper and stuff like that, I'm sure that in a couple of years I'll have a different template or like slightly tweak this template, but I think this is the first year that I feel really, really good about it and I'm willing to share. And obviously, if I make an updated version years to come, I will share that as well, but this has worked really well for me. So, okay, so I'm gonna just put random numbers in here. I don't want to actually show you my own numbers, but here we start with my yearly overview. This is something new that I did for this year because I hadn't done this in the previous years, but obviously after living in LA for over a year, and especially during this like economic time where inflation has been crazy and just like the prices of everything have been crazy, I really needed to hone in on like, okay, how much am I really spending every single month? Meaning, how much money do I need to make every single month? And then also kind of figuring out my fixed income of like, how much am I making? Does it add up? Blah, blah, blah. Because I do think as a freelancer or as a business owner, whatever, you probably have incomes coming in from a lot of different places. Some of them might be somewhat fixed incomes and others might be sporadic. So I have some fixed ones, some sporadic ones. So I have two separate kind of things for that. So as far as fixed income, I do have an average of what I make on YouTube AdSense every month. It's not $100, it's more, but like I'm just gonna put that in as an example. So I average it out to kind of like the lower end of what I make every month. Say it's 100, I put that in here, and then it adds up to my yearly being 1,200. I always take out 20% for tax purposes. So my gross income is 960 from YouTube, if those are my numbers, right? And then other fixed incomes, I recently became a freelance social media manager, so I could be like social media manager. Say I make like 500 monthly, then it would be 6,000 yearly. For tax purposes, you take out 1,200, and then your gross income would be 4,800. etc, etc. You can add as many like lines here, but let's say those are my like main 2 fixed incomes. Then down here, this is kind of specific to me, but I feel like it could be specific to other freelancers and just people who do random contract work. Something that isn't fixed, but I do a lot of, is custom orders. So how I do it is I have people pay a deposit and then like a final payment. So I have it split up into that so that I can kind of see how much income is coming in and all of that. So say Jane Doe paid a deposit of 150, she's already paid it. Sometimes I'll like highlight it and be in yellow so that I know it's been paid, and maybe I'm just waiting for that final payment, which is going to be 300. She hasn't paid it yet, so I don't want to mark it yet, but when she does, I highlight it just for a visual of myself of knowing if that income has actually come in yet or not. That's what I do. But say we've got Jane Doe number 2 paid 200 as a deposit, and then she paid 450 final. So up here I have my total gross income from my fixed, and then custom orders is down here. This section already has the sum of these 2 sections multiplied by 0.8, so that again tax is taken out of it, and then I can see my total gross income being 6,640 for like what I've put in, right? So obviously I add to this throughout the years because I don't just have like custom orders lined up for the entirety of a year. They kind of come up as they go, so I can kind of start filling this out and then start seeing my like gross income go up and up throughout the year. And then again, if you have random fixed incomes that come throughout the year, you can kind of tweak it that way. I'll randomly pick up part-time jobs like a social media manager or something like that, and then that becomes kind of fixed even if it's for like a contract time, so you can change it. Instead of doing like the yearly, do it for however many months you do it or whatever. Very tweakable, but that's kind of how I set it up. And then on the other end of this, I like to also have my fixed costs. So obviously there's like rent, electricity, internet, car insurance, groceries. Groceries is obviously a rough estimate. Again, it's not always like the same thing every month, but roughly I do tend to spend the same amount. And then other things you can put in are like business subscriptions. So for me, like I have Adobe as a subscription that I use that I pay for. I pay for G Suite as well. Things like that, you can put it on here so then you can kind of figure out what your monthly costs are as well as your yearly. Because I know there's also some subscriptions like my PO box, my USPS PO box is not like a monthly thing I pay like 6 months at a time. So I'll just divide whatever that 6 month is by 6 so that I can put it as a monthly even though it's not a month-to-month payment, and then have it as yearly, whatever. So that's kind of my overall template to kind of visualize my year as a whole, right? Roughly. There's obviously a lot more expenses that come and maybe more random income that also comes, but as a whole, this is how I can see roughly how much I need to be making every single month, roughly how much I am going to be making in a year, etc. Then we move on to the month by month, which I just find so satisfying. I literally love tracking things. I love data. I love analytics, whatever. Again, this whole template is super, super tweakable to whatever you need, whatever expenses you have, subscriptions you have, whatever. So feel free to tweak yours to what works for you, but these are kind of the things that work for me. So on this side, I like to put my transactions. So say I went to like Phil's Coffee and I spent $5, and then I can put it into coffee. I have a coffee and ice cream section because I realized last summer I went to get ice cream so many times and I didn't have a specific category for it because it didn't feel like a big enough expense to put into like the restaurant section, but it wasn't coffee, so then that's why it's coffee ice cream on mine. But again, tweak it to whatever works for you. I just found that I went to get ice cream so much last year that I needed a section for it. So say I did that, right? I, for example, pay for ClassPass every month, and that's like $89 I think, and that's like a health and fitness thing. Car insurance, for example. I live in California, so mine's super expensive. I put that in and it starts categorizing things, which is really nice. And then in this other section that says credit is just for me like to write down if I paid for it with my credit card or not. I'm sure people have different systems on like how they track their credit versus like debit expenses. I mostly put everything on my credit card and just pay it back at the end of the month for the sake of points, but not always, not everything is on it. So if I paid this with credit card, I'll just like write it to the side, or sometimes I'll just write little notes to the side too. If I Venmo'd someone for something, I'll write what it was for or something like that. I don't know, you can kind of use it to whatever or not use it, it's not that deep. But then that overall shows me how much I'm spending per month, and then down here is the overall of how much you spent, right? And I just have different sections. So like this one's kind of just like living expenses up here, then I have like kind of food, coffee, alcohol, whatever. This one's travel, just because I travel quite a bit, so that's a big one. And then it's kind of just like miscellaneous stuff. And then down here is my business expenses. So I'll mark any business expense as an NTA expense or YouTube expense, whatever. And then those expenses I'll take into a different spreadsheet and then categorize them further so that it's easier for me when I go and do my taxes. But this is just like a general overview of all my expenses as a whole, not just business. So those get subcategorized later. But for the sake of just like looking at my months in an overview, I just put it as like an NTA expense, which honestly this category is always my most expensive every single month anyway, aside from probably like my living expenses and like my rent. But yeah, you'd be surprised how much money ends up in this tiny little category. But anyway, so that's my expenses, right? And then on the other side, I have all my income. So again, as a freelancer, I get income from so many random little places. Some are fixed, some are not, but generally I have different categories like YouTube, PayPal, Stripe. Those are the websites I use to get payments from my shop. What else? For a social media manager job, I'll put that in there. Say I got paid by TikTok, whatever, that could be a different category. And then over here, I can write things down. So say from PayPal, I got $5. Then on the other end of that, it's gonna show me how much I need to put away in my tax savings account and how I like to go about it. Like say I've gotten a few more payments, put some random things, I don't know. Once I've actually taken that money from my bank account and moved it to my tax savings account, I'll like bold it so I know. So say I've like put all these in, but I haven't put the $100 in, I'm not gonna bold it until it's been put into the right account. So that's something that I do personally just to kind of track it and make sure that I've actually put things in their places, because it's really, really important to put away money for taxes as a self-employed girly. I know some people do 30%. I find that 20% works well for me because I have so many expenses as a business owner. But I guess if you don't have as many expenses, 30% is probably what you should go for. But again, that's kind of just personal. You can switch it to whatever you feel fits you best. 20 works well for me, so that's what I do. As you start filling all of that out, it goes into this little section, and again down here it'll give you your total, the 20% that's going to go into taxes, and then my gross total of the month. And then that way I can kind of compare the gross total that's come in that month versus the overall that I've spent, and hopefully your income is higher than your expenses, as it should be. And then we get to the end of the year. I love getting to the end of the year and looking at this little graph and my summaries and all the things. I find it so satisfying to look at. I love a good graph and a good visual of like income and expenses. So at the end of every month, I'll put in my total income that I made and all the expenses for that month. And then it creates this chart of like expenses versus income. So you can kind of see if like your income went up, did your expenses also go up with it, or did it go down? Did it stay stable? Because again, as a freelancer, I feel like even your expenses are so up in the air sometimes, and it's not super fixed. Sometimes you like, I don't know, if you're a photographer and your camera breaks, maybe you have like a really high expense month where you had to buy more equipment or whatever, or maybe you had a lot of clients that month and your income goes up a bunch. It can really vary so much, and my graphs have always been so all over the place. It's never been this like consistent line or anything. It's literally so up and down because that's just how life is as an entrepreneur. But it's really good to visualize it, and you can kind of see like, oh, if you spent a lot on a certain month, like why did you, what happened that month, how can you balance it out the next month, etc. Right? So I really like looking at that at the end of the year. And then something else I also started to do is kind of figuring out my general like living costs, how much I spent on groceries, etc. on average, because then that helps me for the next year figure out like budgets and how much I'm spending, etc. So living costs, say it was like 1,000 that I spent in January, like 2,000 February, 4,000 March. I don't know why I'm going up, I'll go back down. It'll give me my average to be like 2,000. Same with like groceries. If I do like 50, 25, I wish it was only that much. It's probably closer to like 300, but whatever. You get the point. It'll average out how much you spent. I like to count extra foods like coffee, restaurant, things like that as well. Gas for my car was a huge one this past year because gas prices were so crazy. So that was one that I really wanted to check. Same with like public transport parking. I find it to be more parking than public transport for me personally in LA. But because I do travel quite a bit, if I'm in like New York for Fashion Week, like public transport is something I also like count. So I kind of put both of those in the same category personally. Same with Uber or Lyft or whatever, health and fitness things. And then again, business expenses, figuring out how much I spend every month. So I'm just gonna like write a bunch of random numbers in here so we can get a general total. So then over here I can kind of see my average spending total. Mine are not actually this high. I just put 800 for everything and I don't know why. But anyway, it'll give you your total average for those like basic things that you're gonna spend on every month. Hopefully it's not actually almost $7,000, but again, generally you can just see what your average month to month looks like, which I then use that data again for the following year, putting that in my like overview section where I have my fixed costs. That's kind of what I used from last year to figure out what these would be. And I just find it really helpful to visualize an average spending if you see like one month was higher than the other and kind of figuring out why that was. Or if you like grocery shop at one store, then you start trying a new one and your like expenses go way up, you can kind of like be like, oh, actually like there is a difference between shopping here or there. Like I used to never look at grocery store prices or whatever. I'm like, it's food, I need to buy it anyway. But I have realized certain stores are cheaper than others. So sometimes when I know I need to make like a bigger grocery run, I'll go to a cheaper grocery store than just like going to Trader Joe's like I normally do, because I have noticed again a difference. And I just think that the older you get, obviously the more aware you are of those things. And I think also being somebody that lived in the Midwest on their own first and then moved out to a big city like LA, I have become really hyper aware of how much I'm spending every month and how expensive things can be. And just having a template to look at and something to organize my expenses and income in has been really helpful and has helped me kind of find some calm in it, because I do think as someone who's self-employed, it can be really, really stressful to deal with finances and not knowing how much money is going to come in, how much money is going out. And I think this gives me a lot of peace of mind to be able to check in on it. And I don't do it particularly like just at the end of the month. I'll sometimes go like week to week adding in, so I can kind of see roughly how my month is starting to pan out instead of waiting till the very, very end to do it all, because sometimes it's good to also kind of see like week to week, play it out, whatever. So that is my entire template. Again, it'll be linked down below if you guys want to use it, tweak it to yourself, obviously to what works for you and your expenses and your income. And if you're a business owner, this is roughly the same one that I use for my business. I can do a separate one on just business expenses if you guys want to see that one, because it does get a lot more specific, so that when tax season comes around, it's really clutch. But let me know if you guys want that and I'll do a separate business one. But I do think the general yearly finance template is 10 out of 10. So let me know if you guys use it. Let me know what tweaks you make. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. It really has helped me. This is my 4th year using it, so I feel like I've tested it out. I've tweaked it quite a bit. I'm sure there'll be more tweaking in the future, but for now this works for me and I hope it works for you. But also there are apps that do this for you if you're not the kind of person that can be held accountable to do this on their own. So don't feel like you have to have this whole spreadsheet to figure out everything as a self-employed person. But this works for me. That is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!